we've talked about this before, Charlie, but the green light has been given reluctantly, UEFA say, to playing club league matches abroad. So Villarreal and Barcelona will play in Miami. Interesting again. United States, this magnet for football in Europe, this magnet for European football, and AC Milan playing against Como in Perth. UEFA are saying, on the one hand, this isn't a precedent, but it's happening, isn't it? It's the first time it's happened. It will probably happen again. So I don't know. I don't know what the meaning of the word precedent is in UEFA's dictionary.
Well, um, yes, this is a big moment coming together of various different things, I think. So there was a big court case between FIFA and Relevant. Relevant is a media distribution business that distributes, inter alia, the EFL's rights overseas and various others, right? Um, and Relevant had a case against FIFA to do with the limitations of where sports or football events could be held. This was settled out of court, but the general perception is it was effectively settled in Relevant's favour, and that FIFA realised that probably it couldn't prevent this from happening. Right now, there are different jurisdictions. That UEFA's misfortune is that its main jurisdiction from a legal perspective is the EU, and the EU has proven relentlessly vulnerable, or sort of making UEFA vulnerable to competition attacks. And it's really problematic, this, because competitions and therefore competition organizers do basically rely on the underlying sort of trading of effectively goodwill, which is that the people who take, or the clubs or the countries that take part in a competition say, okay, you're the competition organizer, we'll abide by your rules. Now, what's been happening increasingly with EU competition law is that various entities, and don't forget this applied to the Super League, the Super League took UEFA to the European Court and won. In other words, that UEFA could not prevent the Super League from organising a competitor league, right? And effectively, what's happened here is that UEFA has looked at what happened with Relevant and FIFA on the one hand, then they've looked at the various defeats they've suffered in the European ECJ, the European Court of Justice, on the other hand, in terms of competition law, and have thought, do you know what? That we're just not going to win this. There's nothing we can do. Now, the individual FAs who would have, a chance of imposing the types of sanctions that maybe might deter. The problem is, as happened in our countries, that the FAs in these countries have largely been captured by either the biggest clubs or else the league, and or both, in their country. Because those tend to be the entities and the bodies with more money, and the national FAs tend to need money, and therefore they get effectively bought up by the domestic league and all the biggest players in the domestic league. So what you've got is a situation where, if you look at, for instance, in Italy, you've got the Italian FA, who are effectively clients of the big clubs. You've got UEFA, who are scared of losing challenges in under European competition law, and you've got FIFA, who's at the top of the whole thing, having just lost a major case on this matter. Well, I say lost, having had to settle a major case on this matter elsewhere in the US. So the long and the short of it is that whatever UEFA say, it is a precedent, and it's now a free for all. I mean, that is the case. It is now a free for all, and this is going to get pushed. Here's my prediction: is that this is going to get pushed because you've got European leagues who are short of money. They're losing their TV deals. Even the ones that keep their TV deals, the TV deals are getting smaller. They're struggling to compete with the English league, and therefore every bit of extra revenue really, really matters. So how long until we get to the point which you see in Formula One, where cities are willing to pay to host a major league football match of one kind or another, with that match fee being split between the two clubs that are taking part in it? So how long do we think it is before we see, a Real Barca derby taking place in Tokyo, let's say, or some other massive market like that, with a big match fee being paid to Real and Barca for going there, And obviously the stadium being full of people willing, perhaps under dynamic pricing, paying vast ticket prices. So now that this wedge has been put in the door, I suspect that this is not going to be the end of it.
Indeed. And in fact, Charlie, it's not even the start of it because the equivalent of the Community Shield, the Italian Super Cup, and the Spanish Super Cup have already moved in this direction. Now, you might say these are only symbolic matches, they don't really amount to much. But for example, the 2026 Spanish Super Cup between this is the cup between the league winners and the cup winners. Barcelona and Real Madrid will play in Jeddah in
Well,
2026.
I mean,
So
on the one hand, I'm a little bit ashamed that I didn't actually know that. On the other hand, I'm reassured that my judgment that Barca and Real would be playing in a city which would pay to have them there for a large amount of money has been proven true even before I thought it would be proven true. So this is huge. There are some things we talk about that are technical or domestic or maybe only affect certain things, what it might be. This is huge. This is the start of the major European leagues' attempt to try to compete with the Premier League by any means necessary, which in my mind ends up with the European Super League being brought back.
yeah, and indeed may lead to the Premier League then arguing as the gap is closed between their vast income and that of rival leagues, the Premier League then having an excuse to say, but they're catching up with us. We need to do something to stay ahead of the game, which will be the same thing as those clubs and playing matches abroad. The Jeddah tournament, by the way, in 2026. And there was a similar tournament in 2025 as well. The Jeddah tournament will not only have the cup winners and the league winners, it will also have the league runners up and the cup runners up. So it'll be a four-team tournament in January in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. So again, the expansion of these competitions, the expansion of these formats, and however much UEFA say that it is a precedent, however much UEFA say it's not a precedent, well, we're already here. We are already here. And in that sense, it is already a precedent, I would say. Football Supporters Europe, of which our own Football Supporters Association is part, have spoken out against it. They'll say they'll continue to stand firmly with fans in Spain and Italy in resisting these damaging proposals. They're looking for every possible option to counter these plans. They say that La Liga and Serie A risk undermining their own history and long-term success, whilst inflicting long-lasting harm to football in Europe. Now is the time for a solid regulatory framework that protects domestic competition. So here we
So
are.
which country has a solid regulatory framework that protects domestic competition?
Only
Well,
us.
only us as of last week.
Yeah, yeah. But I suppose
And
my point, Charlie, is that this issue is the point at which the commercial interests of football clash and meet with the interests of supporters or supporters organisations. Supporters on the whole do not want this. Traditional supporters in these countries do not want this. The financial imperatives or the financial desires of clubs are pushing them towards this. So
well,
the immovable
that
object and all that.
yeah, well, other stuff that we talk about is arguable in terms of fan interest. So, for instance, you might say one week, well, ticket prices have gone up by 7 or 8% at this Premier League club and this fan group doesn't like it. And I'll say, playing devil's advocate, yeah, but they still want to sign, those fans still want the best players to be signed, and they need to pay a bit more if they want the best players to be signed, and we're going to have that sort of argument. This is the moment at which the detriment of fan interest becomes inarguable, right? So there is no argument that could possibly be made that a Serie A match being played in Perth in a time zone which makes it, even from a TV perspective, not convenient at all for the domestic market. There is no argument that could possibly be made that that is to the advantage of the fans of those clubs that are playing in Perth. So I think that is the departure. It's the moment at which effectively the business says our historic fans, our legacy fans, to use that phrase that a lot of fans don't like, but it is what it is. I'm a legacy fan. You're a legacy fan of West Brom and Oxford. Um, it's the moment at which their interests are explicitly diminished, right? So we know that this is going to be something that you hate. We know that there is no way we can argue this is in your interests, and we are going to do it anyway. And that is a departure.